next news. Breaking news from the White House.
I'm Gary Franchi reporting from the White House, where history is unfolding 90 miles off the coast of Florida. Cuba is going dark. The entire island plunged into blackout. No power, no oil, no hope for the communist regime that has terrorized millions for nearly 70 years. And now Russia is making a desperate move to save their failing ally. And what happens next could change the Western Hemisphere forever. Now listen to me. This is not some foreign policy story happening far away. This is about your security. Cuba been a communist dagger pointed at America's throat since before most of you were born. 1.6 million Cuban Americans live in Florida right now, families torn apart by that brutal regime for generations. And here's what the mainstream media won't tell you, but I will. President Trump is doing what no president has had the courage to do. He's squeezing the regime. He's cutting off their lifeline. And right now, as I speak to you from the White House, that communist dictatorship is collapsing under its own failed ideology. The lights are literally going out on communism. But Russia, they're not going to let their puppet fall without a fight. This is a showdown, and you need to know exactly what is happening. Now, before I show you the footage that's coming out of Cuba right now, I need to tell you about something critical happening right here at home. That's right, we're tracking a developing story out of Washington that the legacy media does not want you to see. As Iran destabilizes the Middle East, the federal government just made a move that could reshape America's security posture. Now, here's the truth. Our nuclear subs, our warheads, our next-gen power grid, all of it depends on uranium, and we import almost every single pound of it. This is not about energy independence. This is about survival, because a nation that can't power its own military does not remain a superpower for long. And that's why smart investors are watching atomic minerals trading as ATMMF in the U.S. and ATOM in Canada. They're developing domestic uranium resources right here on American soil. When our enemies control our energy supply chain, we are vulnerable. And companies securing American uranium independence, they're not just investments, they're patriots. Take a look at the briefing that's been prepared for you below. This is information you need to act on. Now I'm going to show you what's unfolding in Cuba right now. Yes, the situation in Cuba is moving fast, from members of Congress to the State Department to what Russia is doing right now to try and save that failing regime. And I'm going to show you exactly what is happening. First up, I'm going to show you Congressman Byron Donalds from Florida. He represents 1.6 million Cuban Americans, and I just told you about. He went on air and said something that no congressman has had the guts to say in decades. Now, listen to what he says, what President Trump is really doing here. Roll it.
What's his plan with Cuba?
I think the president was actually very clear in this statement. Look, understand a couple things. Number one, the Cubans have been a communist regime off the coast of Florida for more than 6 decades. Number two, we have 1.6 million Cubans in the state of Florida. If the Cuban regime falls, and Laura, let's be clear, it needs to fall. It should have fallen a long time ago. But to be honest, we haven't had presidents of the United States with the resolve to make that happen. Donald Trump is taking the security of the Western Hemisphere very seriously. And so it's time for them to go away. Look, if they want to negotiate and actually come into the community of nations, communities in our hemisphere, and actually be a liberal democracy based upon individual liberty, based upon fundamental freedoms and constitutional rights, that will be a good thing for the people of Cuba and for their relatives here in the United States, mostly in Florida. So I think the president is right on this. It is time, with the fact that their regime is being squeezed by the fact they're not getting their oil from the Venezuelans the way that they were used to. Now's the time to say, look, well, if their economy isn't going to be self-sufficient, we do need to put the squeeze on them. It's time for that regime to fall.
Did you catch that? Byron Donalds just said it plain. We haven't had presidents with the resolve to make this happen until now. He called it exactly right. The Venezuelan oil is cut off. The regime is being squeezed. And President Trump, right there from the Oval Office, is taking the security of the Western Hemisphere seriously. Finally, a president who means business. But listen, it's not just Congress saying this. Wait until you hear what Secretary of State Rubio just declared. You ready? Secretary of State Rubio, a man whose own family fled that communist hellhole. The State Department just posted this, and Rubio breaks down exactly what that regime is doing. It's finally crumbling. It's now official U.S. policy. Watch.
But the bottom line is their economy doesn't work. It's a non-functional economy. It's an economy that has survived. That revolution, it's not even a revolution, that thing they have has survived on subsidies from the Soviet Union and now from Venezuela. They don't get subsidies anymore, so they're in a lot of trouble. And the people in charge, they don't know how to fix it. So they have to get new people in charge.
Quote, their economy doesn't work. It's non-functional. Secretary Rubio said they survived on Soviet handouts, then Venezuelan handouts, and now nothing. And here's the kicker. He said the people in charge don't even know how to fix it. So they have to get new people in charge. That's the Secretary of State calling for regime change. Now, let me show you what this looks like on the ground. The footage coming out of Cuba is stunning. It shows you exactly what's happening right now. 11 million people, no electricity, no oil shipments in 3 months. And the Cuban people, well, they're not taking it anymore. Watch what they're doing to Communist Party buildings there. Roll it.
All right, let's get a live look now at Havana, Cuba, where the power is out across the entire island, according to local officials there. Cuba is under a U.S. energy blockade. It has not had any oil shipments in 3 months. Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel reporting live on the huge changes and the difficult situation for people in Cuba. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Martha. Yeah, officials in Cuba are reporting that island-wide blackout as the regime there struggles with an energy crisis. Cuba is an island country of 11 million people with deepening energy and economic crises. The Ministry of Energy and Mines says the country's electrical system has been disconnected, and they are investigating. Residents in many cities are venting frustration against the Cuban regime for poor living conditions. And in one city, protesters trashed the office of the Communist Party, throwing rocks at the building and some setting it on fire. President Trump is hoping this will all lead to significant change.
Cuba's a failed nation. Cuba also wants to make a deal, and I think we will pretty soon, or either make a deal or do whatever we have to do.
Did you see that? Protesters trashing the Communist Party office, throwing rocks, setting it on fire. The report said that Cuba hasn't had an energy shipment in 3 months because of the U.S. blockade. And President Trump is hoping this leads to significant change. And folks, it is working. The Cuban people are rising up against their oppressors.
I think Cuba, I don't know, in its own way, if tourism and everything else, it's a beautiful island, great weather. They're not in a hurricane zone, which is nice for a change, They won't be asking us for money for hurricanes every week. But I think Cuba's seen the end. All my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth? They're a very weakened nation right now. They were for a long time. Very violent leaders.
Did you catch what Trump said? Taking Cuba, whether I free it, take it, I could do anything I want with it. You see, that's the art of the deal on the global stage, folks. Maximum pressure, maximum leverage. The regime is weak, and they know it. But here's where it gets dangerous. See, Russia, they just made their move. Sources are now reporting that Russia is attempting to break the U.S. blockade of Cuba. They're sending tankers right now, including ships from their sanctioned Shadow Fleet. You see, this is Putin trying to save his communist ally, Russian tankers, carrying 730,000 barrels of Russian oil heading straight for Cuba. You see, these are sanctioned Shadow Fleet vessels, and Putin is desperate to try to keep that regime alive. He needs Cuba as a foothold in our hemisphere, but President Trump's blockade is forcing Russia to show their hand. And here's the timeline that you need to know about. Sources are tracking those Russian ships, and they've got the exact dates when Putin's oil is supposed to arrive. This just came out from the Financial Times. They confirmed this, but the question is, will President Trump let those tankers through? This is a high-stakes game of chicken between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. Will those tankers make it, or will Trump's blockade hold? The next few weeks will determine the fate of that communist regime. So let me tell you what this all means. You see, here's the bottom line. Right here from the White House, President Trump working from the Oval. For 70 years, American presidents talked tough on Cuba but did nothing. Soviet subsidies kept them alive. Venezuelan oil kept them alive. And now What? Both are gone. President Trump has implemented a blockade. The regime has no power. The Cuban people are burning Communist Party buildings, and Russia is desperately trying to break through with their shadow fleet. Secretary Rubio says they need new people in charge. Congressman Donald says the regime needs to fall. Congressman Jimenez, born in Cuba, says liberating that island would be a great honor. This is it, folks. We're watching communism die in real time 90 miles from Florida. Now, this is the moment that Cuban Americans have prayed for their entire lives. This is what happens when you have a president with the resolve to finish what others wouldn't start. I'm Gary Franchi at the White House, and I will be watching those Russian tankers very closely. And if you want to stay ahead of the story and everything else the mainstream media is hiding from you, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and share this video with every American who needs to see what is really happening. The communist regime in Cuba is on life support, and President Trump, he's got his hand on the plug. So let me know in the comments, should we let those Russian tankers through? I'm Gary Franchi. You stay informed, you stay vigilant, and you stay free. Signing off from the White House.
The system controls information. Information control is power. They don't want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.